Wonderful, Abhilasha. Absolutely wonderful. Naisargi, more depth.
Sure.
These are all wonderful ideas.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
Didi, would you want to pick up from here and just take it somewhere? Or like what I had on my mind was, I just wanted to ask you to begin sharing with, like what's alive for you these days, like with what's happening in the country, like with your work and your passion, like just anything that's been working you these days, or what's on the top of your mind.
I think if you don't mind, I'd love to pick on a few of these and
Yes.
start from there, because these are really interesting. You know, when I interact with people about food, I'm just amazed at the variety, and as you can read here, of the way people relate to food. At some place it's comfort, which is very true. Food is comforting. Health, um, very interesting group of young people who think about health, because at this age I meet very few young people who care about health unless they're into sports or fitness. Healthy food, healthy plants, to make that connection is brilliant. Necessity for survival, at a subconscious level, we all understand that food is necessary for survival, but this, we just take it for granted, right? Food is one of those things that we take absolutely for granted. And that has led to so many of the issues around the world right now. Swaraj is just Saksham Singh being a cheeky young man. But Saksham, you want to say what you mean by Swaraj?
Yeah, I mean, you know this better than me, but I think, when we talk about food and the politics around it, where it comes from, the history and culture associated, I think it's about freedom as much as being able to, to able to, because food comes with a lot of connotations in a lot of socioeconomic aspects and everything else, and it represents a kind of freedom which, be it political, be it, of any other kind, and which is what I mean by Swaraj, because having, like, and we can talk about the seeds and, having the right to, practice agriculture in a certain way, the current political realities and everything. But Swaraj is basically, freedom.
Right. And it's interesting that Saksham brought that up, because I had written down, because with age now I forget, the gray cells are dying. And so I had written down something that I thought was really nice, that I read a few days ago. And it read that, it was, when we think of democracy, it's not just the freedom to buy whatever you want to, right? It's not just the freedom to buy whatever you want to, but it's also the responsibility and the accountability for the freedoms of people around you. And, of people having right to food, not being hungry, people having right to, wages, a working wage, people having the freedom, from fear of, choosing what they want to eat, having that freedom to eat whatever they want to eat. And so, when we think of food, we don't really think about Swaraj or responsibility or accountability, I'm talking about the average person here. I'm talking about the average person, that when they relate to food, it's always about the body and the self. And what I like to do is push people to think a little bit beyond that, and think about food in the terms of, someone has written earth here, which makes complete sense, because food is nature, right? We sometimes tend to forget that, all our survival, all the food that comes from nature. And so when we're eating, we're taking nature inside of us. And by taking nature inside of us, we don't not only change ourselves, but we change the nature around us. And so in a sense, to make that connection, that, you know, in a lot of sense, when we talk about conservation and we talk about nature, we think that nature has to be separated. It has to be out there, protected. You know, nature and human cannot really meet. If you have to conserve, then you have to keep the two separate. And I think food is that essential link that we forget. That, I mean, in a sense, we're animals. You know, we might be sophisticated, iPhone carrying, you know, internet have conversation, but at the end of the day, we are animals who require food for survival. We have not gotten away from that biological reality that, you know, surrounds us. And so in a sense, a lot of the times when it comes to a lot of larger issues of, say, climate change, of conservation, or, you know, human rights and justice, food somehow, you know, takes a set of being something of charity, right? Food के बारे में आप बात करते हो तो, you know, किसी charity कर देते हैं, खाना दे देते हैं, you know, किसी को ये कर देते हैं. Whereas I think, you know, food has to be seen. Food is a fundamental right. The day that I'm born, the day that, you know, I came here, my access to food is a fundamental right. And to, you know, change this perspective around food that we have, I think is very essential. And I would love if these conversations happen to just, if nothing else, get you to think about food in a different way, right? Because all of us will experience food in a different way, but the role that it plays in our life will decide how we experience it. Because no matter what one believes, you know, how sophisticated you are, food molds you as a person, whether you want to believe that or not. Because in a sense, you are what you eat, and you are also what you don't eat, right? When you say, I don't eat something, you're asserting an individuality, you're asserting your personality, you're asserting your identity, you know, you're, you know, putting yourselves in these categories. So I'm sorry, I'm just all over the place, but, you know, all of these things bring out so many different ideas to one's mind. Survival, right? You know, when was the last time anyone on this platform, any of us had to think about where our next meal is coming from, right? So that's such an incredible privilege that none of us have had to ever think about where our next meal is going to come from.
Yeah, thank you, Didi, for opening like multiple threads around food.
Right.
I was actually curious as to have your perspective on कि जो अभी disconnect हो गया है खाने के साथ, meaning seasons don't matter, place don't matter. हम North India में हैं, हम South Indian खाते हैं, continental खाते हैं, Italian खाते हैं, या South मतलब किसी और जगह पे हैं, बहुत गर्म जगह पे हैं, पर और भी ज़्यादा गर्म करने वाली चीजें खाते हैं. मतलब that understanding has also kind of shifted in a massive way. So why do you see that? Like, what do you think are the reasons in the way our lifestyle has developed कि ये disconnect हो गया खाने के साथ, और जो आपने अभी सारी बात की वो कैसे हमें बनाता है, उससे विचार कैसे बनते हैं, health कैसे बनती है, तो ये disconnect क्यों आया है, कैसे आया है, और कैसे respond करें?
डिस्कनेक्ट को अगर हम देखें तो, you know, we can pinpoint the time जहाँ से ये डिस्कनेक्ट, इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन ऑफ फूड एक टर्म है कि हमने फूड को अब एज अ सब्सिस्टेंस थिंग नहीं देखा है. वी सी इट एज an industry now. We see it as a commodity now. And this happened during the Second World War. Second World War के बाद जब वॉर खत्म हो गई तो वॉर के लिए ये जो सारी इंडस्ट्री डेवलप हुई थी, फर्टिलाइजर्स की, पेस्टिसाइड्स की, सोल्जर्स के लिए ये जो फास्ट फूड बना था कि मतलब कोई भी जगह पे किसी भी सिचुएशन में थोड़ा सा पानी थोड़ा सा गर्म करके उसको मिक्स करके आपको खाना तैयार मिल जाता है। तो ये सारी इंडस्ट्रीज जो डेवलप हुई थी उनको फूड एक बहुत बड़ा मार्केट लगा कि भैया सबको खाना तो है ही, फूड एक ऐसी चीज है कि जिसके बिना चलने नहीं वाला है। So this whole momentum of industrialization of food started after the Second World War, in my understanding. And what happened after that, a lot of parallel things happened. कि वर्ल्ड वॉर के टाइम पे सारे मेन चले गए थे वॉर में, so all the women had taken over the, you know, the working of the community. And so when the men came back, the women liked being, you know, out there doing all these different things. So there was this moment in time जहाँ पे उनको पता नहीं था कि अब मैं क्या बाहर का काम छोड़ के सिर्फ घर में आ जाऊं वापस, should I still continue to work? And this is the time when the feminist movement was also rising, and the industry took a cue from that. And the industry took a cue and said कि देखो आप, you know, बहुत इंटेलिजेंट हो, आप बहुत एफिशिएंट हो, आपका टाइम का बहुत वैल्यू है, अब क्यों किचन में 4 घंटे बैठ के रोस्ट बनाओगे, रोटी बनाओगे? मतलब हमने एज ए इंडस्ट्री सारा सोच के ये परफेक्ट टीवी डिनर बनाया है, देखिए इसमें सब्जी है, एक दाल है, एक रोटी है, एक चावल है, सब तैयार है, आपको सिर्फ इसको गर्म करके खाना दे देना है, और you know बाकी सब हमने ध्यान रखा है. So you know, this whole act of cooking, which was an expression of love, which was an expression of culture, which was an expression of you know, generations of information transfer, you know, traditional knowledge, all of this was undermined as drudgery. कि भाई किचन में आप स्लेव कर रहे हो, वो drudgery, it's not the right use of your time, and doing something out there is value for your time. So I think in some ways that was a turning point in the Western world. Now if you look at how information and how narratives are built around the world, it's usually the country with the power and the ability to show that, you know, we are more developed, we are more sophisticated, and their way of life, जिसको एक राइटर ने बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से फ्रेम किया है, उन्होंने उसको बोला है मैकडॉनलाइजेशन ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. मतलब हम दुनिया को होमोजेनाइज कर रहे हैं सबको. मतलब अब दुनिया में अगर आप देखिए तो कपड़ों में बहुत ज्यादातर वो होमोजेनाइजेशन आ गया है ना. Most people wear trousers and t-shirts and pants, and you know, a lot of the young girls traditional outfits ko chhod ke, they, you know, there is a homogenization of clothes. In a similar way, it makes sense for a lot of industries to have homogenization of food taste and palate as well, right? So you have a lot of young people who say meko to pasta hi pasand hai, main to pizza hi khati hu, chocolate is bae, you know, like those are the kind of things that people reflect. You know, food, they find ways, they have so much access to money, information, research, कि वो लोग अब food design करने रहे, which is called engineering of food. So your food, they go into a particular culture, they figure out कि वो culture का palate क्या है, taste preferences क्या है, and they design food around that. So you will have the McDonald Maharaja in India, whereas in Japan you would have a different kind of burger, Italy would have something else, and but still majority of them are eating what is a burger, a French fry, and a Coke. So you know, this whole trend, in a very longish answer to your question, you know, the industrialization of the food has led to where we are today, in a sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, बहुत लंबा हो गया.
नहीं, I think you covered a lot of ground in that, saying that.
One of the things you'll have to do is you'll have to reel me in, or you'll have to stop me. Otherwise, you know, I'll just be all over the place, just talking.
and it's also like food is connected to everything else, no?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can pick any thread of our social fabric, and we can find a way to connect it to food.
Right, right. मैं एक्चुअली आपने वो शेयर किया फेमिनिस्ट मूवमेंट और हाउ द वर्क इनसाइड द होम्स इनसाइड द किचन काइंड ऑफ वाज नॉट कंसिडर्ड एज इम्पोर्टेंट एज लेट्स से गोइंग आउट एंड अर्निंग और जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल
एक नैरेटिव what I
हाँ
want to say is एक नैरेटिव बिल्ड हुआ कि अगर घर में काम करते हो तो वो उसमें वैल्यू नहीं है, बाहर जाते हो तो आप इंटेलिजेंट स्मार्ट हो,
right
which is reflected in our society also, right, to a certain extent.
absolutely yeah and also like it's like so much about very very concrete skills also, no, like वो पिनिया बना पाना या दही भल्ले उड़द की दाल से बना पाना या सर्टेन टाइप्स ऑफ अचार जो 2-2 साल 3-3 साल और
Exactly.
होते जाते हैं, वो बना पाना, वो स्किल्स भी एक्चुअली नहीं पास हो रही हैं, या बीज बचा पाना, मतलब आई थिंक वन ऑफ द थिंग्स शायद बीज के बारे में और बात होगी। पर सुरुति आज है यहाँ पे और उन्होंने एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन पूछा था इन द फॉर्म दैट वी हैड शेयर्ड कि एज अ वुमन you took on the path of like being a farmer, and in India generally, like except in few places, ownership of land is particularly for men. So in a way you were in your life, at least how I see it, that you are very much bringing the feminine elements of nurturing the soil, nurturing the food, really focusing on that things, and also like taking and claiming your space as an educator or as like that masculine assertiveness, where you're saying that it needs to be brought brought at par, food and conversations related to that needs to be brought at par in how we think about our social fabric. तो ये दोनों का एक तरीके से आपके जीवन में मैं देखता हूँ कि तालमेल है, बट जो फेमिनिस्ट मूवमेंट बिल्ड हुआ या जिस तरीके से इंडस्ट्री ने उसको पिकअप किया, वेयर ये वाला ट्रेंड आया है, चल रहा है अभी भी, कि वी हैव countries like South Korea जहाँ किचन ही नहीं बनाए जा रहे हैं. Why do you want to waste time in a kitchen? You can order, dine in quickly.
Exactly.
तो इसको आप कैसे देखते हैं और how do we kind of heal from that? I mean, does that mean that in a new gender equal world we need to kind of share work in the kitchen, both men and women and children? Or how do you see it? Like how do you heal that? Because that perhaps the feminist movement was also responding to some kind of oppression and limitations that were put on the women, generally speaking.
Absolutely, absolutely. Frankly, Shashank, I have no idea how does one heal this situation with food, because food is very individual, and food is in some ways now projected as aspirational. Food is also power. Food is also, you want to be a global citizen. So, आपको अपना दाल चावल ही नहीं खाना है, but you want to show you're a global citizen. So, आपको gourmet food क्या है वो भी जानना है. So, you don't come across as something. तो food का मुझे बहुत complicated लगता है क्योंकि young people have lost connection with nature because urbanization has disconnected them with the source of their food. Now, the easiest example that comes to my mind is the farmers movement, or farmers for that sake, right? Now, this is what I do in class anyways. I ask them to describe when they think of an Indian farmer, what does it come to their mind? And normally सब उसको ऐसे describe करते हैं, old man है, turban है, धरती फटी हुई है, वो आसमान पे तरफ देख रहा है, that sort of a thing. Whereas in reality, 90% of the agriculture work is done by women. सब कुछ because of feminization of agriculture, कितने सारा urbanization हो रहा है, कितने लोग migrate हो रहे हैं urban cities में. तो men decision लेते हैं कि ये बीज हम उगाएंगे या ये क्रॉप हम ये सीजन के लिए करेंगे, फिर वो अहमदाबाद में है, ड्राइवर है, इलेक्ट्रिशियन है, ऑफिस में काम करते हैं, whatever they've migrated for, वो आ जाते हैं, सारा काम बहन करती है, फिर जब हार्वेस्ट का टाइम आता है वो आ जाता है फिर से मार्केट में बेचने का काम उसका होता है. So one way to resolve, I think it's a serious food crisis. I think we are on a cusp of a really, really, really serious food crisis, not just on individual health level, pe to hai individual. I mean, we are the fastest growing diabetic country in the world. Metabolic diseases are all-time high. Cancer is an all-time high. So individual level pe to food crisis hai. But on a global scale also, I think we are on a cusp of a huge food crisis. And I think awareness, understanding, being a conscious consumer, understanding where your food comes from, and in some ways getting connected to your food, either growing it or meeting someone who grows your food and understand the process. I had read this somewhere that children don't want to protect nature because they don't have a relationship with nature, right? अगर आपको किसी के मतलब वहां पे कोई cat मर रही है या पेड़ कट रहा है, but you have no relationship with it because you are in a comfortable zone, why would you want to do anything about it? But to have young children build a relationship with the land, in a lot of countries in the Western world where they had harped on hygiene very much. हम ये सोचते हैं कि हम इंडिया में hygienic नहीं है, Western world is more hygienic. तो जो स्कैंडिनेवियन कंट्रीज है, फिनलैंड वगैरह, वहां पे क्योंकि हाइजीन करके उन्होंने अपनी लाइफ इतनी प्रिस्टीन कर दी है कि now they have introduced 2-hour sessions a day where the kids in kindergarten and school will play with sand, will play with soil, because soil has these wonderful microorganisms which help build immunity, which help build the young people's health. And so getting young people to play with the soil in schools, having children grow their own food, and having these open spaces in your societies where you come together as a community and you grow your own food and all those things can be a way forward. Getting to know your farmers' issues can be a way forward. Yes, Nansargi, did you raise your hand, sweetheart?
Yes, ma'am. I guess we were talking about what can we do to understand that the gender inequality and the food connection. First thing, that we look down to ones who cook, not the chefs, but ones who cook at home. And that is the reason we don't learn how to cook. So understanding that we have to cook for ourselves at the end of the day, someday or the other, and we should know how to cook something that comes from a culture or that comes from a family background, because at the end of the day, that is what is going to satisfy us.
Right.
We're talking about what do we understand by food, and we talk about Swaraj and survival and all. So if we understand, and if every person, despite of the gender, and there is no association with it, and that is when we can understand that food is something that is a part of us, and that is how we can resolve this gender crisis that is being created. Because I look at people from my age and the boys, all of them know how to cook at least.
Right.
Change, right? And that is what I think. And
why do you think boys your age know how to cook? What do you think? What motivates or what interests them to cook?
Majority, all of them want to stay alone. Okay. And that's why they are told that you should know how to cook if you want to stay alone. And if even not that, they have been with their mothers for a long time now. That is how they have conditioned to look at their mother cook and to understand how at least some portions of cooking. That is what interests them. One thing. And another major thing that I feel that they want to cook is because to some extent, neither of them the ones I know who cook, distinguish between works or discriminate between works in a better manner.
Okay. That's interesting. And so what is, maybe, it could be like, what is the one thing you could do to sort of change your relationship with food? that could be explored. Yes. So Shashank, again, a longish answer to your question. I hope I've answered it adequately.
Yes, totally.
Purvi, I wanted to slow down a little bit on and want to unpack with you about, there's so much information. Like when I start to want to go towards connecting with my food, there's some information that I get about my traditions and, like the culture of my grandparents. And there's also this new age modern thing that I'm getting. Like I know I'm not getting enough exercise that I can consume 4 bajre ki roti in the morning, and so maybe I will have like a lighter breakfast as poha or oats. And this like I hear multiple narratives of saying one should have milk, one shouldn't have milk, blah blah blah. Like there's so much information around food. How do we unpack? How do I know what's right for me and what is ecologically right for the people around me? And like you were also mentioning, let me not just think about my food, but the democracy of food for people around me. So if you can just unpack that a little bit.
It's wonderful that you brought this up, and again, because when industry starts dominating the narrative, then they start deciding what is good nutrition for you and what is not, because it's based on what is marketable for them, or what is profitable for them to grow. And I think some of the easiest parameters for one to figure out, what is good for them is traditionally would be, what is available locally, what is available regionally, what is available seasonally. It is something that we will have to reacquaint ourselves with. It will be something that we'll have to relearn and, change our perspective towards. But I also feel that sometimes, in the name of tradition and culture, kuch bhi chalta hai. Like, people sell kuch bhi, like, nahi, nahi, ye to, matlab. So, to be able to decide and distinguish between what is adequate. So, like you said, bajre ka rotla, and maybe, millets is something that you've not been exposed to. Maybe introducing it once in a week, in your house. One of my friends, she's a brilliant cook, and what she does is she takes these traditional millets and gives them a contemporary twist. And so one of the things that she does is, quinoa is a very famous millet. So quinoa is from Mexico, and the poorest of people in Mexico grow the quinoa, and then suddenly we figured out that it's a superfood, and so people around the world now want to eat quinoa, and so these people who actually grow quinoa don't eat it anymore. And we have a millet here called kodri, which is I wouldn't, for the life of me, can't remember the English millet name right now. But so we have a millet which is very close to quinoa. And so what she will do is she will make a quinoa salad and she will make a kodri salad, and get people to try and see which one is which can they make out. And a lot of the times people can't, because quinoa is a relatively new grain for them. Kodri is a relatively new grain for them. But what I find really interesting is that she finds a way to cook them in a way that is not traditional. So it's not just a rotla, it's not just a chapati, it's not just that. You can do interesting things with them, because a lot of young people might not like eating just a millet chapati, because it is a little difficult to eat in the manner that it was eaten traditionally. And so I think having knowledge, getting information from your grandparents, getting information from your parents, talking to farmers, finding these grains, innovating with them, experimenting with them, is a good way. And the benchmark for me, for nutrition and eating, is to see what is grown in the season. So relearning seasons. So, having tomatoes 365 days a year. No, tomatoes in Gujarat only grow in winter. So, when I was a child, we used to eat all of these watery gourds, which we used to hate as children. Lauki, matlab lauki ke 8, 9, 10 versions hote the, rose wo watery sabzi. A lot in summer we used to eat a lot more dals, moong ki dal, nahi wo dal, because sabzis were not available. And then in winters, you would be flushed. You would have carrots and cauliflower. Pav bhaji to winter mein hi milti thi because, sare sabzi tab available thi. But again, because, the market has designed for, this whole environment for us in such a way that when you walk into a supermarket, you forget there are seasons, you forget that there is a global distance. Anything and everything that you want from around the world is available to you. I mean, nowadays I'm hearing everyone saying that avocado is the best fat. I love avocados and I eat avocados and they're wonderful fruit. And thank God people have started growing them in Coorg. But, so again, this narrative, finding a balance in the narrative of, what the international narrative is built, and also discerning for yourself, listening to your body. If the millets are not working for you, they're not working for you. This whole idea of gluten free, itne 14,000 years se hum wheat kha rahe, suddenly everyone is gluten intolerant. And for me, I think gluten intolerance does not come from the gluten in the wheat, but how it's grown, the pesticides, the amount of pesticides that have increased, the amount of fertilizers, the amount of water problem that has increased, that are creating all these, diseases in people. So, all sorts of different ways to figure out what works best for you. But local, regional, seasonal is a good way to go.
Yeah, thank you. That's very nice to remember that local, regional, and seasonal, and all aspects get connected to that. मैं ये भी नाइसर की has a question, but we'll just come to that. But मैं ये भी कहना चाह रहा था कि हमारे कल्चर में, in all cultures, I feel across all regions, food is such a central thing to celebrating life. तो कुछ भी gathering होगा तो खाना is like 50% of that gathering almost.
Right, absolutely.
चाहे वो शादी हो या चाहे वो.
I would go to say 90%.
90%, okay, yeah. I wasn't a foodie clearly.
Bhuti और Satsang आ रहे हैं घर पे, तो the first thing is खाना क्या बनाएंगे, क्या खिलाएंगे,
Yeah.
Everything revolves around food.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I mean, it still is a very important part. कोई party होती है, but again वो क्योंकि order करना और वो हो गया है culture Zomato से या उससे, तो वो the relationship has changed. But how do we also reclaim that? We bring food back into celebrating our culture, celebrating social gatherings, and also bring in these things of cooking and trying different things. And I am always I'm very inspired. I don't know kab ye hoga manifest. Lag raha hai jaldi hoga. The Halchal Cafe that Chikshantar hosts every week. So they would invite different people and just tell them to cook your cuisine. What Naisargi was saying कि आपके culture में क्या बनता था और उसको experiment भी करो. And it is about kind of celebrating that, and then through that many conversations open. So how do we take some of these ideas like Halchal Cafe, like open community gatherings, into different places wherever we are, if we have like a base?
Two, three very interesting and easy thing is कि अगर आप गैदरिंग कर रहे हो तो वो क्या बोलते हैं, सब अपने घर से थोड़ा थोड़ा लाते हैं, उसको क्या बोलते हैं, हाँ, पॉटलक जैसा कर सकते हैं. There is a youth movement around the world where young people from around Western world का है, क्योंकि वहाँ पे waste और problem ज्यादा है, तो solutions भी वहाँ से निकले हैं. So there's a youth network, वो उसको disco soup bolte hai. So all these supermarkets throw away a lot of fresh vegetables because they have to keep the thing going, wo chalu rakhna padta hai conveyor belt ka. तो वो अच्छा वेजिटेबल होता है लेकिन दूसरा आने का टाइम हो गया है, so they throw it away. So these young people get all that waste food, make a big soup and then party. A lot of young people जो cafeteria का waste है वो not in a derogatory way or not in a charitable way, but make it as an offering to people who don't have access to food. जैसे अपने यहाँ जो मुंबई में डब्बे वाले ने, आपको पता, मुझे पता नहीं आपको पता हो या, lots of people are nodding so they know कि वो लेफ्ट ओवर फूड जो डब्बे में जाता है, पहले सुबह में डब्बे वाले सबका लंच लेके जाते हैं, एंड देन लेफ्ट ओवर फूड देन द डब्बा वाला bring it back. Saksham here, when he was in the university, he tried that the college canteen had a lot of leftover food and we had a lot of construction work. है ना Saksham, am I correct? हाँ, construction workers जो आते हैं ना हमारे यहाँ, तो उनके बच्चों के लिए खाने का arrangement. So there are very and all of this has to come from a place of empathy, not from a place of sympathy. Not from up here कि भैया हमारे पास extra food है, आपके पास नहीं है तो ले लो. No, you have to see whether. So one of the things Saksham had to do was ask the community कि हमारे पास ऐसा खाना है आप लोगे. And if I remember correctly, Saksham एक दो बार तो उन्होंने मना कर दिया ना कि भाई हमें नहीं चाहिए, sort of a thing.
Yeah, I think like you had mentioned that it's also important to consider कि staple diets क्या हैं, eating
Right.
क्या हैं, because we can't just thopo the whatever is made and everything. So.
Right, and so they politely, and you have to accept it. They politely decline, saying thank you very much, but this is not something that would help us.
Yeah.
Kritika has a hand raised. Hi Kritika, what can I answer for you?
हाय दी, तो जब शशांक भैया अपना सवाल रख रहे थे, एक क्वेश्चन मेरे दिमाग में काफी टाइम से था और वो मैं रिकॉल कर रही थी. तो जैसे कि शशांक भैया ने बिल्कुल बहुत अच्छा बताया कि हमारे लाइफ में फूड बहुत जुड़ा हुआ है, और अगर हम मतलब इसमें मैं कुछ चीजें और रिफ्लेक्ट कर रही हूँ उस क्वेश्चन में. जैसे कि अभी अगर हम आज के दिनों में सोचे, अगर हम कुछ जनरेशन के पहले जाए तो उनके पास हेल्प नहीं थे, गैजेट्स नहीं थे, तो भी वो सारा फूड का काम दिन भर खुद से करते थे. आज हमारे पास लोग भी है, मतलब हेल्पर्स है, गैजेट्स है, चीजें है. तो एक क्वेश्चन आता है फिर हम आज क्यों नहीं कर पाते ये सब चीजें. तो इस पे मैं जब रिफ्लेक्ट करती हूँ मुझे एक आंसर मिलता है कि कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी लाइफ की चेंज हो गई है. तब बहुत सिंपल था, जैसे कि मतलब फैमिली में बहुत सारे लोग हैं, शायद खाना बनाने का ही काम था और कुछ काम नहीं था. मतलब जैसे कि वर्क डिवाइडेड था, ना ही लोगों को, जो यूथ है उनको शहर जाना पड़ रहा था पैसा कमाने के लिए. तो जो यूथ घर पे ही थे वो मतलब खेती बाड़ी कर ले रहे थे, और जो नीड हो रही थी वो बार्टर से हो जा रही थी. बाकी सारे लोग जो कमा नहीं रहे थे वो ये सारी चीजों में, जैसे आपने बताया फूड प्रोसेसिंग में, वो जैसे गेहूं उग के आया या चावल उग के आया, उसका प्रोसेस करना, धूप में देना, उसको हस निकालना एंड ऑल सारी चीजें ये सब हो रही थी. अभी ये सारे प्रोसेसेस अगर हम एज अ शहर में अकेले रह के करने लगे, और हमें पता है ये सब बहुत हेल्दी है और जरूरी है, और हम ये भी अपने आप से सवाल करते हैं, मतलब मैं ये करती हूँ कि पहले तो कर लेते थे, आज मैं क्यों नहीं कर पाती हूँ. तो मुझे दिखाई देता है कि अब मेरे एस्पिरेशंस भी बहुत बदल गए हैं. मेरे एस्पिरेशंस बदल गए कि कल शायद मेरे पास ये सारी चीजें एक्सेस भी नहीं थी, जहाँ पे लोग मिलते थे, बातें करते थे, चर्चाएं करते थे. तो उस समय मेरी लाइफ की एस्पिरेशन ये भी नहीं थी कि मैं ये करूँ. उस समय ऐसी एस्पिरेशन भी नहीं थी कि मैं इंडिया के बाहर या इंडिया में ही कहीं और घूमने ट्रैवल जाऊं. तो मेरी लाइफ की एस्पिरेशन उस टाइम शायद ये ही नहीं होते, तो मेरे पास जो काम होता मैं वो कर लेती. तो अभी की सिचुएशन में मैं ये समझने की कोशिश करने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ कि जो हमारी इतनी ब्यूटीफुल लाइफ थी उस पे हम वापस कैसे जाए, मतलब लाइक कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज को ध्यान में रखते हुए कि अच्छा अभी हम तुरंत गांव की तरफ नहीं जा पा रहे सारे लोग, और शहरों में रहना पड़ रहा है, न्यूक्लियर फैमिली में रहना पड़ता है. तो वो जो सपोर्ट सिस्टम था वो नहीं एग्जिस्ट, क्योंकि ये सारी चीजें कम्युनिटी में बहुत अच्छे से हो जा रही थी। तो
बहुत
ये सवाल मेरा सबसे
बहुत सारे सवाल हो गए, बहुत, पर आई विल ट्राई टू अनपैक। एक तो आपका कि आप शहर में ये नहीं कर सकते, मुझे नहीं लगता है कि हर किसी को फार्मिंग में जाना चाहिए, राइट?
मेरा सिर्फ फार्मिंग का क्वेश्चन नहीं है, मतलब ये
आई अंडरस्टैंड
लाइफस्टाइल के बारे में क्वेश्चन है, मतलब क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली फूड ही हमारा बेसिक नेसेसिटी है। और
वो है ना कृतिका, इट्स अबाउट पर्सपेक्टिव। वो पर्सपेक्टिव है, अगर आपका पर्सपेक्टिव है कि फूड नेसेसिटी है तो फूड आपके लिए प्रायोरिटी बन जाता है। अभी जो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द सोसाइटी है उसके लिए फूड प्रायोरिटी नहीं है, और फूड एक कन्वीनियंस है। तो मतलब यही लाइफस्टाइल में, यही कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज में भी आप अपना फूड मैनेज कर सकते हैं, जो बहुत सारे लोग करते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है। पर क्योंकि उनके लिए वो एक प्रायोरिटी है, उनके लिए एक चीज है जिसमें वो टाइम निकालना चाहते हैं, इसलिए वो निकाल पाते हैं, बिकॉज वो उसको प्रायोरिटी मानते हैं, राइट? बाकी है कम्युनिटी का, तो कम्युनिटी तो हमें डेवलप करनी पड़ेगी। हम सब फार्मर्स नहीं हो सकते हैं। पास्ट में भी जब हमारे रूरल कम्युनिटीज थे तो उसमें फार्मर्स थे, पर उसमें कुम्हार भी थे, लोहार भी थे, कारपेंटर्स भी थे, पॉटर्स भी थे। तो मतलब काम तो काफी डिवाइडेड था, और काम एग्रीकल्चर के टाइम पे लोग आते थे, इकट्ठे होते थे, पर जो पॉटर्स थे, जो कारपेंटर्स थे, उनको कॉम्पनसेट किया जाता था ग्रेन्स से, right? So everyone has a special skill. I don't think everyone needs to do everything that is right. One needs to support a community that is doing something that is fundamentally important. And so I think it's important कि आप farmers को support करें, अपने region के अंदर एक community डेवलप करें कि जहां से आपको अच्छा खाना मिले, जहां से farmers को support मिले। फाइनेंशियली फार्मर्स को सपोर्ट चाहिए होता है। क्या होता है, जब केमिकल फार्मिंग से आप ऑर्गेनिक की तरफ जाते हैं तो 3 से 4 साल लग जाते हैं आपकी जमीन को फिर से जीवंत होने में। जब आप बहुत सारे केमिकल्स लैंड में यूज करते हैं तो लैंड के अंदर माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स होते हैं, जो माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स होते हैं वो क्रॉप्स को उगने में मदद करते हैं, वो मर जाते हैं। जब वो मर जाते हैं केमिकल्स से, तो वो केमिकल्स की साइकिल हो जाती है, क्योंकि आपने उनको मार डाला तो फिर से क्रॉप्स चाहिए, तो केमिकल्स तो चाहिए ही। सो ये ट्रांजिशन का पीरियड है, उसमें यू नीड टू सपोर्ट फार्मर्स टू स्विच, क्योंकि अगर आपका इनकम अगर खेती पे ही है और आपको ऑर्गेनिक की तरफ ट्रांजिशन करना है, तो एक तो आपको फर्स्ट ईयर्स में इनपुट बहुत डालना पड़ेगा, फिर आपका प्रोडक्शन कम हो जाएगा। तो मतलब जो आप कह रहे हैं वो उसमें बहुत सारे परम्यूटेशन कॉम्बिनेशंस चाहिए, पर उसमें सबसे ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट मुझे चाहिए एक विल चाहिए कि यू वांट to live a life in a certain way, you have certain things as your priority, and what do you call a good life, right? आज मेरी definition of a good life is कि मैं एक खेत में रहती हूँ, मैं अपना खाना उगाती हूँ, खाती हूँ, मेरे पास ये फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी है कि मैं और भी काम करती हूँ, और मेरी इनकम इतनी है क्योंकि मैं ऐसा काम करती हूँ, तो आई एम हैप्पी विद दैट, राइट? Now, for Saksham, that might not be a good life. For him, his aspiration could be कि मुझे by the time I'm 30 एक BMW चाहिए, by the time I'm 50 मुझे एक jet plane चाहिए. You know what I mean? So, what you call a good life also depends on what you give priority to. At the moment, जैसे हमने beginning of the conversation में बात की, हम food को बहुत ज़्यादा taken for granted करते हैं कि खाना तो है ही ना कहीं से आ ही जाएगा, पैसे है तो दुकान में जाके खाना तो मिल ही जाएगा, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है खाने का। ओनली खाना का ट्रिगर मुझे ऐसे पर्सनली लगता है कब होता है, जब कोई पर्सनल प्रॉब्लम होती है, पापा बीमार हो गए, आपको हेल्थ इश्यूज हो गए, आपके कोई क्लोज रिलेटिव को हेल्थ इश्यूज हो गए, तब जाके, नॉट ऑलवेज, बट तब जाके वो एक ट्रिगर होता है और एक सोच आती है कि भैया हाँ, शायद जब डॉक्टर बोलता है या कोई बोलता है कि आपका डाइट चेंज करना पड़ेगा या खाने की वजह से ये हुआ, एंड देन यू माइट और माइट नॉट चेंज स्टिल. अगर आप मानते हैं एलोपैथी में तो यू विल थिंक कि भाई इसको सॉर्ट आउट कर देंगे, पिल्स लेके सॉर्ट आउट कर देंगे. सो इट्स again very individual what you give priority to, what is your convenience, what is your comfort zone, what are you willing to give up in, what do you call a good life. All of those questions are very individual. Abhilasha, आपने हाथ रेज किया था. How can I help you?
Yes, Purvi. So a lot of dilemma which was in my head was a little resolved from what you said right now. But I also want to understand कि ये जो politics है खाना, मतलब खाना सबका right है, तो खाना सस्ता होना चाहिए, है ना? तो जो सबसे ज्यादा important काम करते हैं उनको सबसे कम wages मिलते हैं, और हम एक कॉमन इंसान, एक मिडिल क्लास फैमिली अगर ऑर्गेनिक की तरफ जाता है तो उसको वो काफी महंगा लगता है. एंड इट इज ड्यू टू द राइट रीजंस जो आपने अभी मेंशन किए. अब हमारे घर में सारी मम्मियों की, हम सब की आदत होती है, हम खाने पे बहुत बार्गेन करते हैं, मतलब वेजिटेबल्स पे हम बहुत बार्गेन करते हैं. तो ये कॉम्बिनेशन कैसे अचीव किया जा सकता है? बिकॉज मे बी अगर मैं आज अपना विल पावर लगाऊं तो मैं एक ऑर्गेनिक फूड अफोर्ड कर सकती हूँ, मैं अपना खाना उगा सकती हूँ, बट इट इज स्टिल नॉट फीजिबल फॉर अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल बिकॉज उनका शायद क्राइसिस ही 1 मील का है, या अगर 1 मील का हो गया है तो उनका क्राइसिस कुछ और है. तो एक जो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन हो रखा है उसने कंज्यूमर्स और प्रोड्यूसर्स दोनों को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाया है. तो ये एक बहुत टैंगल्ड सा इशू आता है.
No, you're absolutely correct. अब ये इसलिए होता है क्योंकि अगेन हमारी जो पॉलिसीज है वो बहुत स्क्यूड है. हम फर्टिलाइजर्स और पेस्टिसाइड्स को बहुत ही हाईली सब्सिडाइज करते हैं. हमारा जो फर्टिलाइजर्स और पेस्टिसाइड सब्सिडी का बजट है वो कई बार अब हमारे डिफेंस के बजट से भी ज्यादा होता है. एंड ये जब हम व्हेन आई से सब्सिडीज फॉर फर्टिलाइजर्स एंड पेस्टिसाइड्स, तो ये फार्मर्स को नहीं मिलती है, ये कंपनीज को सब्सिडीज मिलती है, राइट? एंड सो ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन के बाद हमने जिस तरह से एग्रीकल्चर को देखा, हमने उसको एक इंडस्ट्री की तरह देखा, हमने उसको नेचर की नहीं देखा, हमने उसको एक इकोलॉजिकल एक्ट नहीं देखा, राइट? हमने एक कमोडिटी की तरह उसको देखा. तो हमें ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन के अब 40-50 इयर्स हो गए हैं, हमको उसके डायरेक्ट मेजर्स और रिजल्ट्स दिख रहे हैं. फार्मर्स प्रोटेस्ट directly are a result of the policies of the green revolution, but that's a talk for another day. पर उसकी वजह से आज जो repercussions हम face कर रहे हैं, it's time to stop and check कि ये green revolution ठीक है, चलो उस टाइम पे जरूरी था, हमने किया, लेकिन क्या अब हम उसको कंटिन्यू करना चाहिए, या क्या हमें as a country should we change our policies? Now ऑर्गेनिक में भी क्या हो रहा है ना, ऑर्गेनिक हो सकता है वायबल. ऑर्गेनिक तब भी वायबल होगा जब जो इंसान उगा रहा है उसको अफोर्ड कर सकता है, एंड दैट इज पॉसिबल. लेकिन ऑर्गेनिक में भी क्या हो गया है ना, ऑर्गेनिक एक बहुत ही इलीटिस्ट मूवमेंट हो गया है. आई ओनली हैव लॉन्ग टी, मैं तो मतलब वहां से ही मेरे एप्पल्स आते हैं, until it becomes everybody's this thing. Organic is expensive in the beginning, and that is why farmers need help and support. जब वो ट्रांजिशन फेज में होता है तब उसको मैक्सिमम सपोर्ट की जरूरत होती है, क्योंकि उसका खर्चा बढ़ जाता है, आमदनी कम हो जाती है. लेकिन जब उसका स्टेबल हो जाता है, जब उसका फार्म, उसका इकोसिस्टम स्टेबलाइज हो जाता है, तब उसका कॉस्ट कम हो जाता है. एंड सो द प्राइसेस ऑफ ऑर्गेनिक प्रोड्यूस आफ्टर ट्रांजिशन डोंट नीड टू गो अप एंड कंटिन्यू टू बी अप. But again, that is a certain part of society, a certain part of policies that are keeping the prices up. And so उसमें भी मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि बॉटम अप पुश चाहिए. गवर्नमेंट तो पॉलिसी चेंज नहीं कर रही है, तो बहुत सारी जगह पे क्या हो रहा है, नया मूवमेंट चालू हुआ है जिसको बोलते हैं कम्युनिटी सपोर्टेड एग्रीकल्चर। तो जैसे आप जिस एरिया में हो उस एरिया में फार्मर्स है, आप उनके साथ अलाइन कीजिए और उनको बोलिए कि भाई हमें ऑर्गेनिक चाहिए, हम आपको सपोर्ट करेंगे, एंड देन यू बाय डायरेक्टली फ्रॉम योर फार्मर्स। एंड सो दिस middleman, this pricing policy, all of those things get removed. And what has happened, बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग ये इसलिए भी है कि 2018 से जब भी फार्मर्स मूवमेंट्स हुए हैं और फार्मर्स स्ट्राइक पे आए हैं, it has always been the local community that has helped them. खाना उन्हें कौन पहुंचा रहा है, उनको चप्पल कौन पहुंचा रहा है, उनको पानी पहुंच रहा है, and there's this whole movement, people for farmers, lawyers for farmers, doctors for farmers, and slowly gradually people are beginning to realize कि जो हमें खाना खिला रहा है वो भूखा मर रहा है, तो मतलब what is happening? There's fundamentally something wrong in the way that we are doing things. And so I believe the policy changes are not going to come from the top. The government in Sri Lanka, the example that comes to my mind is in Sri Lanka, कि Sri Lanka ने decide किया कि हम organic जा रहे हैं, right? Now organic अगर जाएंगे कोई community straight away, it's like telling an alcoholic कल से शराब बंद, right? And it can't happen. Some people can go cold turkey, but you need support. You need to hold their hands. They need some sort of a treatment. You have to धीरे धीरे करके काम करना पड़ेगा. And that is why, in a very simplistic manner, I'm saying, is why the Sri Lankan organic movement kind of failed. And so then that gives people a chance to say कि देखा fail हो गया ना, organic तो हो ही नहीं सकता. अरे भैया, जो हमने 10,000 साल तक जो हमने किया था, जिस पे ह्यूमैनिटी सरवाइव की है, जिससे ह्यूमैनिटी इतना सारा सोफिस्टिकेटेड कल्चर डिजाइन किया है ना, कि इसमें जीरा डलेगा, इसमें राई डलेगा, इसको बॉईल करके खाओ, इसको फ्राई कर, मतलब it just boggles my mind the sophistication that we have around food. And so again, very long answer for this thing is that people have to demand a certain thing. When we have to decide again as a priority. I work with communities and I work with farmers, and I align both of them together. और उनको families को लगता है पहले कि ये expensive है, but then they see the change in their health. They see the change in their taste. They see how much nicer they feel. They see कि कितने लंबे समय तक उनका grains बिगड़ता नहीं है. And so in a way they recognize कि चलो हम 500 rupees अभी farmer को दे रहे हैं, वरना वो 500 rupees हमें डॉक्टर को दे देने पड़ते थे, राइट? और 500 rupees डॉक्टर को दे के भी हेडेक अगर कम नहीं हुआ तो वो ये नहीं कहेगा कि अच्छा लो 500 रुपए वापस, आपका हेडेक नहीं कम हुआ, right? So it's investing in your health. It's also investing in the earth, so it can keep feeding you good food for a long time. So it's a multiple thing, and the movement will come from the ground up. Only when the people realize that this food that is the industry is making billions by feeding us crap, and then we are paying billions to the doctors to keep us safe, and we can just give a little bit to the farmer and they can give us good food. Till we recognize and understand that and step away from it, from the uncomfortable zone, थोड़ा difficult है, पर है, possible है, हो रहा है, बहुत सारी जगह पे हो रहा है.
Thank you, दीदी. कृतिका, you have your hand up.
Thank
but
you.
मैं और भी लोगों के सवाल पढ़ रहा था फॉर्म में जिन्होंने डाले थे, और चंद्रमौली ने एक बहुत अच्छा सवाल पूछा था कि हम स्टेक होल्डर्स को कैसे साथ लाएं फॉर अर्बन कंज्यूमर्स के लिए सस्टेनेबल कैसे बनाएं, फूड का रिकनेक्ट कैसे करें. एंड आई थिंक व्हाट यू मेंशन्ड अबाउट कम्युनिटी सपोर्टेड एग्रीकल्चर, दैट स्पीक्स टू दैट. या आपने जो अभी फार्मर्स मूवमेंट from the last 4-5 years का एग्जांपल दिया, that speaks to that. I hope Chandramal you got some insights there. दो लोगों का मतलब मैं जानता हूँ ग्रुप में, और सवाल भी है कि समरीश जी ने पूछा कि like I want to be based back to the land, or Shubhangi has started her journey of I think getting some land after she got married, and has also moved into natural farming. Samrish ji and Shubhangi, agar aapko isse related questions hai, like how do you, if you feel convinced that you are ready to shift from an urban place to a place closer to land and engage in farming or growing food, by your own self, in whatever way it can look different for different people. If you have any questions related to that, I think now is the time.
I have a few suggestions. I mean, if you, Samrishji, if you're ready to move back to the land, I would recommend that you start with your weekends. Every weekend go and see if you like working with the land. One of the things is that when I started farming, I jumped in head first without thinking. And now when I look back, I think कि मैंने अगर साथ में कुछ और किया होता तो फाइनेंशियली मेरे लिए बेटर रहता, पर फिर ऐसा भी दिमाग में आता है कि अगर मैं कुछ जगह और कुछ करती तो फिर मेरा कंसंट्रेशन कम हो जाता फार्मिंग पे. तो मतलब इंडिविजुअली आपके लिए क्या बेटर सूट करता है वो तो आप ही डिसाइड कर सकते हो, लेकिन फार्मिंग बहुत ही पेशेंस चाहिए आपको, बहुत ही मेहनत मांग लेता है और कंसिस्टेंसी मांगता है कि आपको मतलब वही काम ओवर एंड ओवर करना है. तो बहुत सारे यंग पीपल जो बहुत एक्साइट होके कहते हैं कि हमें ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग करता है, तो आई इनवाइट देम टू द फार्म. आओ एक हफ्ता रहो और जो हम रेगुलरली काम करते हैं वो करो. और जितने हमारे यहाँ लोग आए हैं आज तक, nobody has taken up farming full time. They've taken up helping farmers, or they've taken up marketing of farming produce. Do you know what I mean? But no one has actually jumped into farming. And I personally feel that younger people should take the time to travel, should take this opportunity to do a lot of other interesting things. I mean, if farming is your calling, of course, please do farming. I'm not saying that. But farming will root you in a place. 15 साल से मैं मतलब कहीं गई नहीं हूँ for longer than a week, 10 days. Because animals hai, farm hai, you can't, up and leave. You have to. Rain, shine, cold weather, nothing. 5 बजे 6 बजे गाय का दूध निकालना, मैं नहीं निकालती, let me be honest, पर you know what I mean, कि उसका दूध निकालना है तो निकालना है, उसका गोबर उठाना है तो उठाना है. You can't say कि आज संडे है तो lie in your गोबर, कल उठा लूंगी, आज हॉलिडे है. तो there are no holidays. शादी भी है तो वापस आ जाना पड़ता है 6 बजे क्योंकि गाय को वो निकालना है. पर फार्मिंग आपको फ्रीडम भी बहुत फ्रीडम देता है कि जैसे आपने अपना क्रॉप बो दिया तो फिर you have time, you are waiting, you have to you have time to do a little bit of other things. So depending on where you are in life and what your interests are, I think a balance of not putting all your eggs in one basket and seeing if you like that physical work day in, day out is very important.
Okay, thanks, Shashank. Actually, I don't know. Actually, I recently read this book, One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka, and got truly inspired by what he wrote. So no-till farming, natural farming, and stuff like that.
What part of India are you in?
I'm in Bangalore right now.
Okay, you're in the perfect place, because I also read his book and I said, this is what I'm going to do, but I live in Gujarat and it's not possible to do no-till farming. So one of the things is also to understand the context of where you are and what you read. So, Bangalore is the perfect. And I always give the example कि हम Bangalore में नहीं रहते कि टमाटर उगेंगे हमारे यहाँ, that sort of a thing. So you're in a perfect place. Yes.
Yeah, but farming is not something where I am looking. I mean, I have not seen it as a means of financial security or maybe some kind of return from farming. I look at it much more spiritually, actually, like the way Masanobu Fukuoka has seen. So
Then-
that spiritual connection with the land and all,
Then you should not worry about it. Then you should jump right in. It's only when people are looking for financial returns that I am a little hesitant to say, jump. Then I don't think you have any problems at all. You will love farming. You will absolutely love farming.
Yeah. So that is where probably, then the question arises. I have no knowledge about farming. I don't know trees. I don't understand that particular thing. But what he said is that you need to be very patient and observe and look at and just connect with the land and the trees and plants. That connection you need to establish, being very patient about it. Right.
It doesn't matter. When I started farming, I didn't know anything at all. If someone asked me where does milk come from, I would have said Amul. So, absolutely. I don't think that should deter you at all. Does not matter. Does not matter if you don't know anything.
Yeah. So then the question comes, actually, where do somewhere I believe that, I don't know, probably it's not possible to do it something by yourself. Probably you need to get in touch with some community, where a small community which is of similar thought process and look at it very spiritually, holistically, and so that is where probably the issue comes is how do you know about such communities which are doing it as a spiritual part of their own growth. That is what it is.
So what I can do is I can send you a few links. I can share them with Vibhuti and she can share it with you. There are a couple of people in and around Bangalore who are very good places where you can explore on the weekends to go and farm and learn and talk and do all of those things. So I can share those people's numbers and links and their websites, and it would be a good place for you to start and creating a community for yourself.
Thanks.
Shubhangini.
So Charchit and Charchit is my husband, and he has taken up the farm 3 years back. The same excitement levels too high that yes, he has been doing terrace farming since 12-13 years. So he was like, I want to grow more. So that's how he purchased the land. And now, since we are more into it, we read more, we study more, we do more courses, and we are like, the main parameters what you see while purchasing the land, considered none of it. So it's a disaster. So it's a complete disaster. The community, the people around, the neighbors around, all those empathy and everything I have experienced during Grame Manthan, Swaraj and Prava and all, I just don't see a practical application. I go completely nil when it comes in a place like this.
I know. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Realities are very difficult and complicated. But that's the fun, that's the fun part of, farming and agriculture. When I went to my farm, I used to be one of these people who would have a board and to-do list. Aaj ye karenge, and by the end of the day, ek mein se aadha ho jata tha, that would be like a grand achievement. Sometimes the people don't show up, sometimes the machine doesn't work. When the people and the machine are there, electricity nahi hai, nothing really works, and then still somehow everything works. Also, urban people moving into a rural community is a very difficult adjustment. You know, our idea of space, our idea of mera kya hai, privacy, and boundaries, मतलब completely alag hai rural areas mein. So learning to live with the rural community, language, nuances. So it's all part of the learning experience. बहुत मजा आएगा, बहुत मजा आएगा. You will have a
fun. Like it's fun to do all these things, and like we don't feel like staying in cities because we don't connect with the cities. Even if we go, we like going for like 10, 12 days, and it's fine. Like we did a recent permaculture design course from Aranya, and we want to go for things like that, but it's very difficult to leave from here because again, then whatever efforts we put in, we want someone to take care of it when we are not here, and finding those trustworthy people is a challenge.
तो मैंने वही बोला कि you can't leave for more than a few days. So by the time you come back and they'll be like, हाँ आपने पेड़ उगाए थे पर चले गए, नहीं है. And you're like, नहीं है मतलब क्या, कहाँ गए? They're like, yeah, monkeys ate them. Yeah, the wild boar came ate them. And it's like, but I brought this especially from there. They're like, अच्छा, नहीं है पर sorry. Like it's just gone.
We got 60 bamboo trees from Jabalpur, and like just 10 are surviving out of it. What happened was like we got it from train, so those were small saplings, and we planted, and the next day rain started, and rain was there for around 1.5 months. Our caretaker was like, "Bhaiya, everything is drowned. I cannot do anything." We couldn't even come because there's no path to come inside.
Right.
So for the entire monsoon, 4 months, we were like, oh, we couldn't come. So one day we just parked our car outside. We walked अंदर से कहीं से तो खींचे. हमने कहा भाई हमारे पौधे लग रहे. What is it? Came and to us, and we were seriously shocked. And that guy gave us नहीं भैया इधर से पानी नहीं आता, उधर से पानी नहीं आता. Charchit is like, this is my farm. I've built each and everything by my hands. I know कहाँ से क्या आता है. Just don't make a fool, no. So that
and also they don't have the same priorities as you, no. They'll be like, हाँ पौधे थे, तुमने बोला था, गाने थे, तो मतलब मेरे नेबर की बहन की, भाई की, चाचा की बेटी की शादी थी, तो मैं चला गया. 15 दिन नहीं आया. So many times I would confirm with someone कि भैया आप कल आ रहे हो ना काम पे. He'll be like, हाँ 100% आ रहे हो ना काम पे. In the morning gate से वो जा रहे हैं. I'm like, भैया कहाँ जा रहे हो? And he's like, हाँ बस market तक जाके आ रहा हूँ. I was like, आप आ रहे हो ना काम पे? And then he doesn't show up. He's like, भैया आप आने वाले थे, क्या हुआ? He's like, हाँ मारपीट के गया, उसने बोला वहां चला गया. And then next day again. And so प्रायोरिटी उनकी और हमारी कभी मैच नहीं होती है. It's not even about money, it's not even about money. It's like हाँ नहीं आना आज काम पे, हो गया खत्म.
It doesn't matter to them. No, वो बोलेंगे कि भाई हमारा खाना राशन पानी आप दो. हमने बोला आप सब्जियां उगाओ और खाओ, आप राशन उगाओ और खाओ, हम आपको मना नहीं कर रहे हैं. But they will not focus on growing the vegetables. They will just focus that we should give them money to get the stuff from market. So that is where we are struggling on that part to keep a balance. And yeah, he is so much stressed that he was just lying on the bed and he just came.
He's like, okay, I have someone who can relate to mere dukh, mera andar ka.
Yes.
Dukh.
That's why I just got up and came over here, climbed on my chair just to listen to you guys as well.
और आप तो मतलब भाई हो. मुझे तो मतलब for me every time I would say something they'll be like हाँ पर साहब नहीं है, भाई नहीं है. Some people who think they know English, they'll be like sister तुम्हारा मिस्टर का है. I'm like no sister, no mister. I am
That's what happened with her.
I'm the kind of boss, and they're like no. And so then I have these two men who work with me. So then फिर अब मैं उनको खड़ा कर देती हूँ कि हे राजा भाई को समझा दो. Then they're absolutely, I will say the exact same thing, Rajabai will say the exact thing. His words they will understand. Mine they will just stare at me like, huh? Yeah. It's like, but you've got to learn to deal with so many. अभी तो मतलब शुरुआत है. अभी तो और झेलना पड़ेगा.
The worst experience what like demotivated us was कि we went like our home is 30 kilometers away. We went there and like our neighbors, they just burned the trees which we transplanted. It was a 12-year-old tree and we transplanted, and they just put the petrol and they've burned it.
Oh my God! Why?
That's what they just. I don't know. It was just next to the boundary. It was on the boundary of our farm and their farm. So that was something that just broke our
they
heart.
need that part of my farm.
सन गुजराती में उसका टर्म होता है, मतलब वो सन आता है तो उसका क्रॉप ठीक से ग्रो नहीं करेगा, इसलिए काट दो. तो गॉड
नहीं ऐसा नहीं है. उनको वो अपनी बाउंड्री में लेना है वाला पार्ट, इसलिए
encroachment
करना है वहां पे ना उस तरफ.
Oh God, maybe I should take Shubhangini's number and she can vent with me later after this whenever she wants to. Abhilasha, you very nice to meet you, by the way, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Abhilasha,
Thank you, Shubhangini. Very, very good reality check. I was also reflecting that whenever you start something, whether it's farming, whether you're leading your own project, because few of these instances were sparkling in my head when I work with government and when I work in a government school, and they just do not respect at times whatever you are doing and they go opposite. So I think you need to get community with you. You need to have a shared vision. You need to do that community building and all of that. But one question which I'm thinking right now is that if I belong to a state, for example, if my fathers were farmers, whether should I go back to my own region? Does that help? Or should I go seeing, where I can find a similar community who is doing a similar kind of work?
I think you have to find your own comfort zone. Going to your father's village will come with its benefits and baggage. So no, I don't think, I think your language is very important. So going to a place where you understand the language and can communicate to people is, I think, very important. How do you feel in that place? When you when I walk into the farm or my house, I feel really good. No matter where I come from and I enter the gates and I'm like, feels like home. So, finding a place that gives you that, connection, that feeling is important. No matter where you go, there are going to be difficulties with rural communities because, like I said, their ideas of things are very different. And, I've been in my farm for over 18 years now, but I'm still the outsider because I look different, I wear different clothes, I speak differently, I'm a single woman. And so no matter how much I do or am in some ways a part of a community, I'm never going to be part of the community. So, there are certain things that one has to accept about moving into a new place. Also with my community, what I have realized is that when I first moved there, I wanted to do a lot of work in that village. Meko bachcho ko padhana tha, meko ye karna tha, wo karna tha. And then I realized that I needed that distance, right? I needed a place where I could have my privacy, that I did not want everyone in my business all the time. And so one of the decisions that I have made is that I'm not going to work in my village. All the work that I do, and I get judged on that all the time. Ki aap yahan ho, and you can contribute to society. And I guess I can, but for my mental stability, in some ways, to have my privacy, it's a decision that I've made that I'm not going to work in my particular village. If someone comes to me and I can help them, yes, but I'm not going to go out there and say I'm going to educate kids, or I'm going to promote organic farming, or I'm going to do this. The things that I do in other villages. I'm going. So those are the decisions that that will come to you as you move to a place, but. Choosing a place will have to be very instinctual to you. You have to feel how you feel, because that's where you're going to spend a lot of your time. So unless you feel comfortable and unless you feel at home there, it would be rather difficult. So there's a question here. Hello, thought it might be of interest. Okay. Excellent.
I think Kabir has a question probably.
Yes, Kabir, how can I help you?
Hey, hi Purvi Didi. And I think I would be asking you a few technical questions, because right now I'm somewhere between where Samrishi is and where Shubhangi is. So I'm somewhere in between of that. And for the last 3 months, I have been on a farm now and trying to learn more about permaculture, trying to work day in, day out, just to see if this is a thing which works out for me. And seems like this is one way which I want to move for now. And similar to you, like I have, like at least at this point of time, I have this like melange of ideas where just go in this rural community. The first priority sort of is like being a little wisely selfish over there, is like learning, growing your own food. And then given that I have some educator experience, how can I integrate that into it, and then sort of work with rural children as well over the time, rural communities over the time. And also like I have some experience of living in a rural community full time for like close to 2.5 years. So that decision that it seems like I'll be able to manage for some time, have got some like experience backing. I think just with all of this, a few questions. One is a technical one, because I heard you quoting that the no-till farming, which like Fukuoka-san mentions in his book, may not be applicable to all the regions. That's one thing that I'm curious about. If you can just give me some little bit of the regional details of, okay, what sort of climate or it looks like for that sort of farming to happen or not happen. That's one. The second one is that for someone who is just fresh into this thing, like I'm still trying to figure out a piece of land, given that my finances allow not for buying a land, but leasing a land. So that's something which I have I've been, in fact, I think as I talk to you, I'm just back from my first ever land search in my life. Yeah. So I think what are one or two or three advices you would give as somebody who is starting up new, given that like the rural bit is something I'm comfortable with, and I think I was absolutely able to feel your challenges of that. You would be there, but you would get invited to marriages, you would go to funerals. At the same time, I think the sense of community may take 20 years or 30 years to arrive in with everyone in this space. That's a second sort of question that I have. And I think the third is just on the land bit. Third is, I think, more just little overall broader discussion, is given that in our country, we see that a lot of land holdings, similar to the wealth inequality that we have, we also see a sort of land inequality around the globe, where let's say 70% of the land is controlled by a very tiny proportion of the population. And I also wonder that given that we have such a big land, such a huge land inequality in this country, and given that land becomes that essential resource, and I'm feeling it more and more as I'm like, oh, does anyone has land? Okay, I'm happy to work. Please leave me out. Somebody, you have land. Like, how does that work out? Because I also know that P. Sainath talks extensively about it, that we can bring in n number of agricultural reforms, but this is one core reform that until you do that, everything else is gonna work only for as much of time. I think given that you are somebody who has such an extensive experience, I would, if you can share some of your thoughts on this land inequality, and yeah, like, and how does this country or just move and this world at large, but if country move with that along, and we juxtapose all these ideas of organic farming, Swaraj, sustenance, with that. So I think these are three questions.
Okay, so you will have to help me come back to your questions every time, because
Right.
gray cells dying, can't remember so much.
No worries at all.
Just wanted to interrupt. Also, it's about 7:30. We had initially proposed for 90 minutes. So, Purvi Didi, maybe this can be like the closing remarks from you. And we'll send a closing email with some of the stuff that has come up in the chat today. And we'll share maybe email address for sure, but also number if Purvi Didi is comfortable for anybody.
Yes, absolutely.
And if anybody wants to leave at this point, feel free. But I think what Kabir asked is an extensive scope of.
Yeah.
So we'll listen to that and close for tonight.
Easily another hour and a half.
Yeah.
So Kabir, starting with why the Fukuoka no-till farming will not work in my area is because we're a desert, we're a dry, deciduous kind of an area. And he does this kind of farming in a more tropical, more moisture in the air, temperature around 20-25. And so the kind of bacteria and the kind of microbial activity that is required for this to happen will not happen when summer 44 degrees comes. And so in some ways, this no-till can be done in a certain area. Where I am specifically placed, it does not work for us. So that is what I meant, that geographically, climatically, it does not work. And one of the first things that I usually recommend to people going to agriculture is to do a little bit of research into what was done in that area before the Green Revolution came in, right? What are the kind of crop patterns that the area had? What are the kind of water structures that they had? What are the kind of, and so sitting down with a couple of elders and, getting stories from them as to, आप क्या उगाते थे, क्या खाते थे, पानी कहाँ से आता था, getting the signs of all of that. So understanding the story before the Green Revolution gives you a very good understanding on how the agroecological zone in that area works. The other is learning from the farmer. I think one of the best things to do is to learn from the farmer themselves. So, Subhangini, you and in your area, if you can find a person who's willing to come and work with you on the farm and to show you the skills of how to till the land, how to do all these, the fantastic line they can do. They can just walk with their, I don't know what they're called in English, but all these tools that they have in Gujarati we call a powder, and they just make these kyaris. They just stand there. And for the life of me, if someone drew a straight line, I would still screw it up. The skills that they have of finding the knack. There is a lot of information with people about traditional ways to manage pests, traditional ways to manage the land, traditional ways to fertilize the land. And it's not just composting, or it's not just this, but a lot of crops that are used as cover crops, a lot of crops as that are used as green manures. There is a lot of crops used as intercropping. All these things regionally, just like how food and language change, agricultural techniques also change. What I find fascinating is that I live in a place called Matar, which is 40 kilometers from Ahmedabad. And then I go to North Gujarat, which is, say, 100 kilometers from where I live. And then sometimes I go to south of where I live, which is 200 kilometers from where I live. And I'm in the center. The agriculture techniques change completely, right? And so they have their own little nuances. And so what works in your area, and what are the practices that they follow? If you can just follow someone, find someone to teach you that, I think is essential. So yeah, key things, seeds, finding someone in your community who has access to seeds, and not just asking for them forthright, but building a relationship with them and figuring out a way of having access to those seeds would be incredible, whether it's bartering or something like that. Animal care is a very important part of farming, because I don't think you can farm without animals. I have a whole view on vegan, being a vegan and all that, so that can be another talk. And so wrapping it up, for me, when a lot of people ask me that, are the farmers happy with this, getting all their, the laws being repealed and all of that, the laws were not going to help the farmers, but repealing them is also not going to help them, because agriculture is in a crisis right now. And we need reforms of a different sort. One of the reforms is the land reform that you asked for. The other reforms are many other reforms. And one of the main ones is this addiction that we have to industrial farming. We need to find a way to step away from that. And a lot of that can only happen when consumers recognize the role of food in their lives, try to be more conscious about what they're consuming, and get to know their farmers. And I think those are the 3 essential steps that one could start off from to build a conversation and take it further from there. Yes? But Kabir, you and I can have a longer conversation later on, whenever you wish to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Purvi Didi. And I think do expect me to bug you a lot more in future and just jog down your gray cells. I think I'm going to need a lot of that. So thank you so much. It just feels a little grounding to know there is somebody out there I can just go and reach out to. So just thank you for being that person.
Anytime. And Shubhangini, anytime you want to call and, when you're yanking your hair out saying, "Pata hai aaj kya hua?" I will be happy to hear. I will be happy to hear you went, and I can add a little bit fuel to that saying. Yes,
we attended some session which Vai organized a few months back, and so that's how we know. Since it was you, so we were okay.
First lockdown.
So we have already planned to visit you whenever we come to Ahmedabad. That's all.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. You're very welcome to come anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Vibhuti and Shashank. It's always a pleasure and an honor to come to any of your conversations, because I absolutely am in awe of all of you and everything that you do. You're a wonderful, wonderful group of young people, and stay blessed always. Anisha, very nice to see you. I hope you're well and that everything is good with you. Take care of yourselves, and thank you for having me.
Lovely to meet you today.
She's hanging out in the 90% partying zone. I think she's heading to some family function. And
nice. Wonderful. So take
yeah.
I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for showing up. It definitely looks like people who've been associated with farming, connecting to the land, food, have been very curious to show up here. And just, as many of us would get to a plate of food right now, inviting a conscious connection with what we're going to eat and how we are engaging with food. And I think we just kind of touched on the tip of the iceberg, like Purvi Didi says, there's so much that can be opened up, and the invitation is to just continue, and we shall continue to bug you, Purvi Didi. Thank you for doing this today.
Looking forward to that. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Purvi Didi. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kiran, for coming.
Thank you.
Kiran is like the youngest member here. She grew up in next to in an ashram next to mountains in Haridwar.
Ooh, lucky her, lucky her. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Chaliye.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Dhyan rakhiye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Good night.
Purvi.
Bye. Take care. See you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Vibhuti, Shashank, and rest of the Youth Alliance team.
Kabir, which area are you looking to lease land?
So Yeah, I think the answer to that is pretty simple. There are two ways. One is that any place where the money that I can afford for lease, I can get a land in that. That's one criteria. The second criteria is like I think I would prefer something like a little hilly region. I have been living in Uttarakhand near like a village of Tiri Gadwal for 2.5 years, and I think I really have enjoyed living there with its own set of trade-offs which have happened. I think what Purvi Didi was saying, just feeling a little like it's like, oh, people don't get me. What is happening? And like why can't they? But I think it comes with its own share of interesting things too. Currently, I'm in Himachal. I'm talking to you from like a beautiful mud building. I am like privileged to live in this mud building for now. And yeah, so I'm just whomsoever like right now the thing is pretty simple. Whomsoever is ready to give me a land which can fit my sort of purse to lease a land, I would just simply move there.
The only problem I see with leasing land is all the investment that you make, and the time is over and you have to pack up and leave.
Right.
Would be very difficult and heartbreaking. And so I would recommend that you figure out a way of finding people who are not interested in their land as such. A lot of NRI people who have a lot of land here, and then sort of partnership jaisa, rather than leasing.
Right.
So आपने जो मेहनत की है लैंड को रिवाइव करने में वो सब I'm scared that you might after you do all that and the person who owns the land says कि oh ये तो अच्छा हो गया है चलो इसमें से कुछ पैसे बनाते हैं.
Yeah, you are more than welcome here, Kabir.
Thank you so much, Shubhangi.
You got owners of the land.
Like 2.5 acres भी बड़ा लगता है जब खुद से सारी चीजें मैनेज करनी थी. You can come and take a part of lease and do whatever you want to do.
That's the kind of relationship you will have to build. That's the kind of, because if you lease it from someone, there's always that.
You need not lease it also. That's what Churchit is saying, that you can just come and live with us and do whatever you want to. We would be more than happy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this warm invitation. I think this means a lot, Shubhangi and Churchit. Thank you so much for it. Right now I'm just in the process of it.
Up for it. So you can always reach out to me for that. We also want some like-minded people to be here.
And quickly before Vibhuti kicks me out, सब पहाड़ों में जाओगे तो हमारे desert में कौन आएगा? Everyone goes to पहाड़. We are in this hills, we are in that hill. And
we are in Rajasthan.
वहाँ hills में रह के पाएंगे कि हम ये कर रहे वो करे. अरे भैया 44 degrees में भी तो कोई आओ. पता चले.
Same. No पहाड़. Only water.
49 degrees. 49 degrees.
Very.
Just water is at 40 feet. Water is at 40 feet groundwater, so that is like, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
हमारा तो water logging का problem है. हमारे तो 8 feet पे पानी है.
Wow.
8 feet.
My God. This seems like a farm owner's planting session.
And I can see Shashank's going tick 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 अब बंद करे. Is that?
No. I'm happy to move out and let this.
I'm going to leave and log off. And thank you again so much for having me. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Same here. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.